Good morning, everyone. I am so pleased that we have a full house, 8:30 in the morning, after the night of a concert, and that to Macklemore. Thanks, everyone, for joining this morning. Really appreciate it, showing the love and the interest. My name is Untitled Chapter. I am an alliance manager here at GitLab, and I've been working very closely with the Salesforce team, product manager, sales, alliance, across the board to bring this solution, the joint solution, to life. And it's been an amazing journey. We've been working very closely together, late hours, early mornings, across time zones, different video conferences. It's just been phenomenal to see how far we've gotten in such a quick time, and that's a testament to our partnership. And that's why I'm so excited this morning to share with you what we've been working on. You got a little glimpse of it yesterday at the super session. So this session, this breakout session, is intended to be an extension of that, a little bit more detail on what you saw yesterday when Claire presented in her super session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you my co-presenters today. My colleague, Francis Potter, who's a solutions architect at GitLab. And I'm also joined by Claire and Doug, both from Salesforce. Claire is a product manager for developer tools, and Doug is a developer at Salesforce. So let's talk about what we're talking about today. First, we'll do some housekeeping.
Yep, this is our forward-looking statement. You've all probably seen this a couple of times. Please make your purchasing decisions based off of what's readily available. Everything we're talking about today is.
She's delivered way more sessions than I have, so she's a lot more fluid with that statement than I am. So let's talk about what we want to talk about today in this session, right? Let's talk about the journey. We've kind of divided this talk into three sections, right? Today, the various development workflows available today, and what that looks like, and what are the pros and cons and caveats. And then we'll discuss the path to getting to where we want to be for modern development. GitLab, what are the features, capabilities, what do they enable you for Salesforce development, and what it all means. And then lastly, we'll talk about the future workflow, give you a live example, a showcasing of what all of this put together actually looks like. So today, the path and the future. So I'd like to pass it to Claire to talk about today's development workflows and various options.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here so early, and we'll get through this part kind of quickly because it's what you already know. So today we've got three workflows that you might be working on. You might be on change set still. You might be doing your changes in sandboxes, keeping a tally of what you've changed and sort of manually moving those through. This can take a lot of time. It doesn't enable version control. If you're here, that's okay. We're going to help you get farther down the developer tooling route. You might be in org-based development, which I talked a lot about yesterday in the super session. So you're making changes in sandboxes, you're enabling a version control system, which is awesome. But maybe maintaining those sandboxes is kind of tedious. We are introducing more ways to make sandboxes easier to use, but it's still not sort of that pinnacle of modern software development. But again, we're going to help you get to that next stage. That next stage is package-based development, and we've been talking a lot about package-based development the last 6 months, probably since we launched DX, really. But when we really defined what the two different DX workflows are, we've been talking a lot about this workflow, and you're making your changes in Scratch orgs. We track changes between the Scratch orgs and your local, so you don't need to keep tabs on what you're changing. Scratch orgs are an ephemeral org, so you create them. You do your changes, you pull those changes down, and you can delete that org, and you can start afresh later on with a new org. This really enables continuous integration and delivery and automated testing, and this is where we'd like to get you. We're also adding a lot of things to make that previous flow work well with continuous integration. But today we're going to talk a lot about package-based development, and we think this is where GitLab and Salesforce really shine. So as I mentioned, there's this sort of manual process with change sets. You've got this org-based development that gets you kind of about halfway there for modern tooling, especially with the org development commands. Now you can be using that source format. But it does require a higher level of maintenance. And then finally, you've got package-based development that really allows you to leverage this automation stuff that we want to talk about. So I'm going to pass it back to Mayank, and he's going to talk about what that looks like in GitLab.
Awesome. Thanks, Claire. So before I begin, quick show of hands, how many of you heard of GitLab? That's awesome. How many of you guys have used GitLab?
Boom.
Even better. Now we'll be talking about how you can use it for Salesforce development. But before I go into the nitty-gritty details, for those of you who aren't aware of what GitLab is or what we actually do, I want to give you a quick primer on GitLab as a single application for DevOps. And when we say DevOps, we mean it in the context of various stages of development that are continuous, ongoing, and collaborative, right? You've got multiple different stakeholders within a project, particularly a development project. We've got a developer, a project manager, a reviewer, a QAer, a tester. Various different teams are involved in the development process. So what GitLab brings to the table is a single user interface, a single application, a single pane of glass where everyone can work together and collaborate, from the planning and managing staging process to getting the project started and allocating work to actually creating, storing the code in Git and actually automating the pipeline through CI/CD. So all of that's kind of encompassed in one single application, bringing value and collaboration across teams. And we'll see some of this live shortly. So what we hope to do, or what we are enabling teams to do, is eliminate the complexity and empower teams to manage projects, not tools. You're not stitching together various different components. You're not writing manual scripts. It's all under one roof, reducing the complexity. Manage your projects, not your tools. And as I mentioned before, you'll see this in the demo, we've unified the developer experience for a tighter communication across the board for admins and developers. So if they're communicating, they can link each other, they can reference each other, they can talk in the same language within the same project issue, build epics, etc. But where we really shine for the developer specifically is how we automate manual tasks, right? No more manual QA. You can actually write your desired test and have it actually execute as part of the pipeline. So you've automated the QA process, for instance, right? Not only there, you can also automate the deployment, right? Deploy to state and then promote to production. See some there as well. So why is GitLab particularly important for Salesforce? Now, one of the things that I think is very valuable is it's a great avenue for you to adopt the latest and greatest of SFDX or Salesforce Developer tooling. Salesforce made a lot of announcements earlier this week, and a lot of those are easily assimilated into the CI/CD pipeline because we use tooling underneath the hood, SFDX CLI, to kind of puppet all the stuff that we want to automate. So it's easy to adapt, it's easy to adopt, and it's very robust for your development teams to automate processes. So let's go through an example, right? An example of what this new Salesforce development experience workflow with GitLab looks like. Starts with the project issue. Starts with documenting what are we doing, how are we doing it, and who's doing what. This could be as easy as a to-do item on a project issue. Quick text, hey, I need this completed, assigned to a developer. Or it could be as elaborate as a whole epic. If you want to adopt more agile types of development and faster iteration, you could have a whole manifest of requirements and specs. But that's pretty straightforward. It's basically documenting what needs to be done. From that issue, you can create what we call a merge request. And what that does is, if you're familiar with Git terminology, it basically forks the master, right? If master holds all of your source code that's ideally mirroring your production, a fork is basically a copy of that where a developer can kind of work in their own isolated environment. It's their branch. It's their feature branch. It's what they're working on in that specific feature to adhere and deliver on the project requirements. And I do want to point out, this isn't just one branch to one master ratio. You can have multiple developers doing the same workflow concurrently, and this is important. You can have multiple branches simultaneously from the master branch for various different features being developed concurrently. So after the master branch has been created, a local isolated copy of the code, now the developer can get started working with coding. Clones the code locally and spins up a scratch org, for instance, for local development kind of experience. Any changes that they do to the code, they can commit back into GitLab via Git, and they'll commit early and frequently. It's pretty much a save point. And as they commit, they have the option to kick off a pipeline. So obviously, you don't want to, you might be committing, but you might not want to do full testing, full-blown testing. There comes a point where you're closer to the end of the feature development cycle, and you're saying, okay, now it's time to actually automate some of the testing and validate, hey, is the feature working or not? That's what triggers an automated CI/CD pipeline. Again, mind you, you're still in the feature branch at this point. You're automating the QA testing, you're putting it into a Scratch org automatically based on the CI template that we have available, and you'll see some of this shortly. And within this Scratch org, it's going to run all your tests, any of the commands that you'd like within the pipeline, and automate the whole process to deploying in an ephemeral Scratch org where you can review the app. So now that the testing is done, might even be packaged, it's basically promoted to a Scratch org, and now you have the option to log into it. You can review it, you can interrogate it, physically check out if things are working. But it's not just you. You open up the conversation for peer review and discussion. The same original admin or manager or project manager that opened up the issue, that opened it up for developers to start working, can seamlessly now log into the app and review it themselves and provide discussion and feedback, which then yields to the opportunity to iterate, right? Do we proceed and improve the change, or does the developer need to go back and make some adjustments? And that is the whole iterative process that GitLab enables for, again, continuous and iterative improvement. But let's just say for the sake of this conversation that everything looks good, thumbs up. Let's go ahead and approve the merge request. What that means is now the feature branch, the delta, the changes, whatever was coded, can now be merged into your master branch. Again, master branch is a mirror of your prod environment functionally. So as this process is merged into the master branch, we'll go through the similar workflow as prior. It kicks off a pipeline. This pipeline is subtly different, however. Here you have the option of deploying to a sandbox org, which may be your staging environment or a subversion of a staging environment, which would then allow you to, again, do integration testing, QA testing, automate the whole packaging experience, and then promoting it into your staging environment like a sandbox org, and then also allow you to review it, right? Now you have a review app in your sandbox org, which might have some sample data in it as well. And then we go back to the same key principles of iteration. Now other folks can be involved in the discussion all in a unified pane of glass and review and give feedback. And then lastly, if everything looks good, we want to approve the merge request. Now it's basically eligible to deploy to production. And that's where we promote it into prod, where you can do further feedback from users if need be, if you missed any in the staging environment. But lastly, that's basically deployed into production. Now it's live, and end users can actually benefit from the work that the developers have done, and much quicker to value. So this is theory. This is theory. At the highest level, I put in this slide for those folks in the back who probably couldn't see the small text. But at the end of the day, at the bird's eye view, GitLab sits in the center, a cornerstone for all your developer experience across admins, project owners, QA testers, et cetera. Multiple teams at the bottom. The left-hand side, representation of a local developer actually doing the work and creating the features and enhancing the solution. And the right-hand side, you've got project managers. They're all working together through GitLab. That's automating the process, creating ad hoc Scratch orgs for your CI/CD testing, automation, and then also promoting to staging environments like sandboxes or production as desired. So enough about theory. Let's see this workflow live. So I'd like to pass it to Doug and Francis, who are going to show how GitLab for Salesforce development, is easy for adoption, allows agility for teams, and provides you an avenue for an automated approach.
All right. Thank you, Mayank. All right. So enough slideware. Let's get into the code. So getting started, so we've been working on this fictional app for a product explorer for a company called eBikes that manufactures electronic bicycles. Now the current version of our app lets you kind of filter through filter through the products that are available, click on it, view it. I think it's pretty slick. But we've been doing this org-based development model. We've been deploying changes through change sets, and we got a few different groups in here. And I really enjoyed the presentation about GitLab pipelines, and I think we should try it out. You think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Only if you can figure it out.
Only if I can figure it out. All right, so
We try it?
we should try it. Now, I heard that there's this new way to get into GitLab where I can use my Salesforce credentials, right? So let's try that out. I don't like registration forms. So, look, there it is, Salesforce. I like that option. Oh, now how am I going to log in? We'll put in my account. Hope I put my password incorrect. Well, that's nice. Oh, there we go. Do I want to authorize GitLab? Sure do. I'm going to accept the terms to create my new account. Slick. And so now I'm in GitLab. Didn't have to register anything. Didn't have to jump to an email. Using my existing Salesforce account, which could be a production account, could be a developer edition account. That's all good. Now, I want to get started with a project.
I'm going to pause you for 1 second. So you can all try this now on GitLab.com. If you already have a GitLab.com account, then you have to go in a different way to hook it up to your Salesforce credentials if you want to. But if you don't have a GitLab.com account, you can do this now, and it'll create a free tier account for you on GitLab.com. So pop open your laptop, do it right now.
So we'll show them how they can do that.
Or at the happy hour.
Yeah. So if you do have an existing GitLab account, you can come into your settings, click on account, and then here you could click connect for Salesforce. And then from then on in, you could log in through your Salesforce credentials. All right. But at the moment, you didn't create me a project. I want an easy way to get started. Now, I do think I did some light reading last night. And Claire, you wrote this fabulous blog post, the GitLab team, and I hear that we've got templates. Templates. Aha, so GitLab's got this namespace SFDX. We've got some template projects here. I want to get started with the SFDX project template. So I'm going to copy this URL. And then when I come to create my new project, no, there you go. Learn the UI.
It's my job as a solution architect.
Solving the problems. Now I could put in my project name and start with a blank project, but I want to start with a template. And I have the URL to an existing project to serve as my template. And so I'll paste that in here. And we'll call it, we'll say this is our e-bikes product explorer. And we'll create our project. Now, the great thing about the template is it's going to provide me pretty much all the scaffolding that I need for this new project, like any other SFDX project that you created. But it's also going to come with this GitLab YAML file. Can you all still hear me? No? There we go. And the GitLab YAML file references the...
You got a handheld or something?
Maybe.
While they're dealing with the tech,
Yeah. Song and dance.
so there are 2 templates in that gitlab.com/sfdx directory. One of them is the CI/CD template. That's all the CI functionality that you're about to see. The other is a project template that you can use, just like Doug was showing, make a copy of it. It's basically a scaffolded out SFDX project with the GitLab functionality, the reference to the GitLab functionality built into it and ready to go. So essentially, you can start working, and Doug's going to show you how to pull changes down from an org so that you can start working with this right away. We really want you to have this on-ramp right away, and because it's awesome.
All right.
basically it.
Yep.
You good?
All right, I'm back. Thank you.
Woo.
Awesome. So the great thing about the GitLab YAML that comes with that sample project is it's very short and sweet. It's referencing the main template. So if you don't want to worry about how does the magic work, you just say, I want to use the GitLab Salesforce DX CI. But you could come in here and customize it later if you'd like. Now that we have our project, I need to get our app's metadata into it. Now, like any good, scroll up, any good Git project, I can just clone the URL, and I'm going to create a new project. E-bikes. Uh-oh. Helps if I type my commands correctly.
There you go.
All right. So we'll open up our e-bikes project. Got all our scaffolding here. And another thing that the template does is initialize the SFDX project JSON, assuming that you're going to be generating a package. All you would really need to do is change the package name here to a package that you've already created. And then if you've been doing LWC, Lightning Web Components development, they use Node.js and NPM to kind of run locally your unit tests. And if you have that package JSON or would like to use it, we allow you to specify hooks to customize what actions occur when we're going to run your LWC tests, run your Apex tests, or even customize what happens when the scratch org is created. Oftentimes, you don't just want a scratch org and you push your metadata. Sometimes you might need to load some sample data with it or other actions or install dependency packages. And so here in the package JSON scripts, you could add a scratch deploy key, and then you could either put in your commands here, or you could conveniently call, say, another script in your project that has multiple commands in it already.
And if I could just add, this is partly around, in DevOps, there's this idea of a review app, which is the idea that on feature branches, while you're working on a feature, you should be able to deploy your changes on that branch to an environment where non-technical people can review it. And so we're using scratch orgs as review apps. And so the CI/CD pipeline has the capability, it's not a requirement, but it has the capability of deploying to a scratch org as you're working on something so that you can review it and see your changes outside of, maybe separately from if you're working in a scratch org, you could separately deploy to a separate one to review changes. So we're sort of simulating or replicating DevOps practices in the Salesforce world.
Absolutely. Now, I already know from a package.xml that I've created earlier what metadata that we want that represents our eBikes app. So I'm going to copy that and put that into the package.xml that came with our template. And then the Salesforce CLI, I can then retrieve that metadata. Using our new commands that went GA, I'm going to do force source retrieve. I'm going to pull that from our eBikes org, and then I want to specify the package.xml.
Who's using SFDX command line tools today? Yeah, and who's used force source retrieve? So that's the main way that you can pull changes from a sandbox or production org down into your Git repo and start sort of using DevOps practices with it.
Awesome. And there now I have all my metadata, and the next things to do would then, of course, use Git to commit and push this up to my sample project. Now, out the gate from here, the CI pipeline would automatically kick off, but it's going to fail because I haven't yet set up some environment variables in GitLab for it to know what's my DevHub org, what are my sandbox and production orgs that I want to commit into. So at this point, I'm actually going to jump over to a second project of the e-bikes where I'm a little bit further ahead. In the settings, I've already come in and set up our CI/CD variables. And this is all discussed in the README for the templates, so no worries there. And here we've got the auth URLs for the DevHub, production, sandbox that the pipeline's eventually going to commit into. Now in this project, I've also gone ahead and created an issue. And it looks like, okay, so although we have an awesome product explorer, users preferred, rather than clicking on the bike and like just redirecting them to a new page, they'd rather see the product details here on the right and stay on the same page. All right, that sounds reasonable. Let's try and do it. Now from here in GitLab, I've got the issue, and directly from here, I have the option to create a merge request and a branch named after the issue, so I can immediately get started. The merge request automatically has this work in progress prefix, and that lets people know, hey, we're working on this new feature. And it knows what branch it's on. And now I want to check out locally so I can start doing my development. Okay, I'm going to try and use 3 hands now. So we're going to check out our branch, and it conveniently gives me the commands to...
I'll hold it for you.
Oh, well, thank you. Claire, everyone. All right, so these are the commands, and you can see GitLab understands the developer workflow, and they're making it very seamless and easy. They know exactly what the next thing I'm going to be doing. And so here, I'm going to actually change back to the project I had earlier. Same project, just fast forwarded a little bit. And I'm on the master branch, but I'm going to copy the command that I got from GitLab to switch over to my new branch. Awesome. Now, I'm going to do my development, and where all good developers do their development is in a Scratch org. Force org create. We're going to call this demo. We're going to use the definition file here. The DevHub. Okay.
This for the fast typing, huh?
All right. So while that's thinking, oh, there we go. All right, so now we need to, well, I'll show that org-init script. So for my development, it's not simple enough that I don't just want to deploy my source. I also have a permission set that I need to assign, and I also have some sample data that makes development a bit easier, right? So I'm always going to be running these 3 commands. I always want that to be done for my developers. And so not only am I going to do that here, make sure I've got the default username set. I did not set that.
What config are you setting there, Doug?
I'm setting the default username so that I did not have to specify that alias on these commands that I'm about to run from the org-init script. So this is a convenience that I can do here as a local developer, but remember we talked about the package.json, and I specify that as one of the script keys here. So when the pipeline kicks off to create the Scratch org, it's going to run my org-init script as well. So that gives you a hook to customize so that your Scratch org looks and is designed exactly how you want it to be. where it's pushed the metadata, perm set, and now loaded the data. Now I just open up into my Scratch org. And we'll make our change. So we'll switch over to the eBikes app. We'll go to our Product Explorer page. Yep, we don't have the feature there yet. So our team has already developed the new component. And what I need to do is now add it to our page. Save. Come back. And let's test it out. Click on different bikes. Awesome. Does that look like what our customers are wanting?
Yep.
Awesome. So now I'm ready to pull down that change. And I'm actually going to use another one of our, we're going to use the force source retrieve command again. I could have used force source pull, right, to pull, dynamically determine what I had done in my Scratch org, but I want to show off our new commands. And I'm going to specify that I want to grab specifically the Flexi page for Product Explorer. Perfect. So I got the one change down. And now I will add that. We'll say we'll add the product card. And then we'll push that back up. Now at this point, as the developer, I'm done. And then I come back over to GitLab. And I should see that the pipeline.
The push hasn't completed yet, but that'll kick off the pipeline. Woohoo!
Network, okay. That would kick off a pipeline, but like any good demo, we have existing pipelines. Oh, there's one kicked off right here. Now, because I'm on the branch, I'm not on master, all we need to do here is run some preliminary tests, such as your Lightning Web Component test. And because Lightning Web Component tests don't run on your org, they just run locally, we actually set that up as a preliminary testing. So if you have LWC tests, and only if they pass, then we'll attempt to create a Scratch org. So that kind of saves you from burning through one of your Scratch org allocations or daily quotas, unless it's actually absolutely necessary. And then after that Scratch org is created, and it runs any of your customization for, like I showed with the org init script, then it's going to run any tests that exist on the org. And again, you can customize that through the package.json hooks. And with that, Francis.
Let's skip to one of the pipelines that went all the way to production.
Yeah. So this is a pipeline that ran on master. And Francis, you want to walk us through the pipelines?
Sure, yeah. So there are two different kinds of pipelines in the template. One of them is if you're working on a feature branch, it runs tests and deploys to a Scratch org. That's all that happens on the feature branch. After you've merged to master, then it runs the full pipeline, which can go all the way through, if you choose to deploying to your production org. And so the stages that you can see here, oops, which one am I in? That one. Hello. Oh, your mouse is set different to mine. Okay. The stages are the preliminary testing. This is any tests that can run on the GitLab runner without actually deploying to an org. So that's your Lightning Web Components tests in Node.js. Then it creates a Scratch org and deploys to it. Then it runs tests on the Scratch org, like your Apex tests or any other automated testing that you could do on the Scratch org. That Scratch org is now available for people to browse and look at. So it's a very useful sort of review environment. If that all passes, then how do you scroll your thing? Oh, you don't have three-finger scroll. Okay. Then it does package creation, package deployment to Sandbox, which is a manual step. You'll notice there's a play button there, and then package deployment to production if you click the manual button. One thing GitLab does, far more than just Git hosting, is we're actually managing and tracking what deployments are in what environments. And we're treating those orgs, the scratch orgs, the sandbox, and the production org, as environments. So the same way GitLab deals with Kubernetes clusters or Amazon EC2 instances for other kinds of applications, it's dealing with orgs in the Salesforce world. What we've done, and this is fantastic collaboration with the Salesforce team and the GitLab team. You see, Doug here has been demoing the GitLab product that is not even his company's product, is to really map the concepts of DevOps as practiced by GitLab onto the Salesforce workflow. This is our environments browser here. You can actually see you have your scratch orgs listed there, your production org, your sandbox org, the buttons over here. That one, yep. That'll actually take you to that org. And the red button actually will delete the scratch org in the case of the scratch org. So we've fully integrated the Salesforce orgs into our DevOps environment management system within GitLab.
So Francis, if I wanted to go check Doug's work, I could go to that scratch org environment, press that button, and it would open the scratch org with the eBikes app already in it. And I could do my review even as an admin. If I don't want to touch the CLI, that scratch org is already ready for me. It's already got his changes in there, and I can just go in and review them myself.
We only have a few more minutes for if there are any questions. If you have a question, step up to the microphone in the middle, please. If we don't get to your question today, there's a card on some of your chairs, and some of my colleagues in the back are handing them out. We are hosting a happy hour with an AMA session. We will all be there to answer your questions about GitLab itself and about the Salesforce integration this afternoon. If you can't come because you're flying out and you're still interested, definitely grab one of us, give us your contact info. We would love to follow up with you. We're very, very excited about this collaboration and this integration and really want to help you be successful in implementing it. Yeah, questions?
Yeah. Hello?
Yep.
There we go. I have two quick questions. One, the environments idea. How does the CLI know, or how do you establish the credentials in the CLI to talk to that in particular environment?
How do you establish credentials to talk to the environment? Great question. You actually have to get the auth URL for your org and enter it as an environment variable in GitLab. We have a secure variables.
So it becomes a JWT-based approach?
We were using JWT, now we're using the SFDX auth URL variables.
The second quick question was, you said that you could authenticate via the Salesforce account. Am I correct that there's some way to control who has access, who doesn't? Basically, an organization or a group within GitLab.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. On GitLab.com, keep in mind GitLab has self-managed or on-prem as well as GitLab.com. On GitLab.com, anyone who has Salesforce.com credentials can create their own account, but they don't have access to anything unless somebody gives them access to anything. GitLab has a very sophisticated permissions and access control model, which is mapped on top of the single sign-on. The single sign-on is just for authentication, so it maps onto our existing permissions.
Hey, Francis, two quick questions. As a Salesforce developer, I'm a big fan of Trailhead. Is there a Trailhead where we can get hands-on with this stuff?
There is. Jack, by the way, is the Salesforce developer at GitLab, so he's kind of here in two roles. Yeah, there's a Trailhead on the main Trailhead site, which explains how to do this. It actually shows a slightly older version of our CI template than the one we're showing here today. But there is a Trailhead. It takes you step by step through every single step that is involved in integrating these. And there's also tons of documentation on Salesforce's website, of course, about all the SFDX tools, and tons of documentation on GitLab's site about all the GitLab tools and all the magic. And yeah, there's an awesome Trailhead.
Right. And second question, I'm super excited for the happy hour and AMA. What time does that start?
It starts at 3:30 at the American Bookbinders Museum. We'll be there till about 6:30. And that's just around the corner.
The AMA will be at 4 to 5, by the way. So don't miss out on that hour.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question about deploying to production and other environments. Can we control who can deploy and who cannot?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a couple of different answers to that. One is that a default GitLab project, are we out of time?
No,
I got 55 seconds. Okay, a default GitLab project, the master branch is actually a protected branch. and you can restrict who's allowed to actually deploy to master, which means you're restricting who's allowed to merge those feature branches into master. And the way this pipeline is set up by default, you can only deploy to sandboxes and to production from the master branch. So only people with what we call maintainer access to the repo can do those deployments. Now, the CI template is a template. You can override functions within it, or you can copy the whole thing and modify it yourself. So if you have other rules that you want to apply, like you have branches with other names or something like that in your repo, then you can do that. But by default, it's restricted to what we call maintainers, which is a higher level of access to the repo.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, one more, last question.
Okay. So, quick question. If you were to roll back on one of your deployments, like, for example, you deploy a package version 6, and you don't want that, and you want to roll it back to package version 5, is it possible with this current?
If you wanted to do a rollback, you would have to execute those SFDX commands yourself.
Okay.
You know, Salesforce is actually tracking the package versions, so that's doable. And GitLab at that point would actually lose track. That's actually a great feature request for our CI pipeline for it to kind of track a rollback. But yeah, no, you'd have to go outside of GitLab to do that.
Francis, quick question.
Okay.
What if we rolled back the repo to a previous commit and then recommitted it where it had package 5?
Oh, you could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You roll back by creating a new package version that represents the metadata of the, if you want the pipelines, machinery, you know, that automation to work, just create a new commit, but it looks like version 5.
Actually, we should write up some docs on rollbacks because there's a couple of
Yeah,
there's probably advantages and disadvantages.
I'm just,
to both. Yeah.
so currently I have a team CD flow developed with some bash scripts, which does SFDX, and like, you know, like the script is set up in such a way you have the artifacts which points to that version. So if you just want to go and run the previous deployment, it'll just, previous build, it'll just deploy it. So is it any way we can set up something like that in using YAML?
It's certainly
like create
possible.
artifacts
The CI template that we've developed doesn't actually have that, but yes, that would certainly be possible
we can
to do.
customize it.
Come to our happy hour. Let's talk. I want to see what you did.
We're also, I'll be outside this room right after this session, so if there's any questions that weren't answered, you can probably catch us right afterwards, but we want to be respectful for the next session. Also, last statement, we are giving away, there's a promo going on right now. If you have a Salesforce ID, you can get GitLab.com for free for 3 months. That's their gold tier. So easy way to get started, single sign-on, apply for the 30-day trial, and within a week, we'll upgrade you to 3 months gold.
You have to use your Salesforce credentials to sign on in order to get the free 3 months of GitLab Gold. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for sticking it out to the end. Woo!